what you came for. Blood on the game bow, everybody drop it like rainfall. This is your moment, eyes on a puppet. Can't think, chest just open, and they're singing your praises, la la la, screaming your name, la 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 la. One more step, you're immortal now. 'Cause once you play God, once you play God, they're gonna crumble one by one. Then we gonna ride right into the sun like it's the day my kingdom come. Baby, we're
The rise of Alexander the Great is not just a story of military conquests. It's the journey of a young king who challenged the greatest empire of his time and left an immortal legacy. Get ready to discover how this 20-year-old man changed the course of history forever. The year is 334 BC, and the ancient world is about to experience a seismic shift. A transformation so profound that it will echo through millennia, shaping history in unimaginable ways. At the center of this storm is a young king, Alexander of Macedonia, just 20 years old. Armed with audacious ambition, a mind sharpened by the teachings of Aristotle, and an army of 40,000 warriors, Alexander sets out on a journey that will challenge the greatest empire the world has ever known, the Persian Empire. But his mission goes beyond conquest. He seeks to carve his name into eternity. From the moment his army crosses the Hellespont into Asia Minor, the world is set on a course of transformation, and nothing will ever be the same. Imagine this: a young king, still in the prime of his youth, leading a small kingdom against an empire that stretches from the Mediterranean to the plains of India. The task seems impossible. The Persian Empire under Darius III is a colossal force, rich beyond imagination, with an army that could swallow Alexander's forces whole. Yet for Alexander, this is not a time for doubt. It's a moment for greatness. His leadership is fearless, his strategies are brilliant, and his men, well-trained and devoted, are ready to follow him into the jaws of any challenge. Few figures in history have left such a lasting impact as Alexander the Great. To the West, he became the embodiment of heroism, a king whose name transcended generations. But to the Persians, he was a menace, a cursed invader who shattered their world. His journey begins in Greece, a land famous for its contributions to art, philosophy, and science. But this is not just the Greece of thinkers and orators. It is also the Greece of warriors, a land forged by blood and steel. Greece itself was a land divided by rivalry. Two mighty city-states stood as giants, Athens and Sparta. Athens, the cultural and intellectual heart of the ancient world, was a city of democracy and artistic brilliance. In stark contrast stood Sparta, a militaristic society built on discipline, austerity, and war. For generations, these two powers vied for dominance, culminating in a rivalry that would define the era. Yet even these rivals could unite against a common enemy. Decades before Alexander's rise, Athens and Sparta joined forces to repel the vast armies of the Persian Empire. Their legendary stand at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off a Persian force numbering in the tens of thousands, became the stuff of legend. Though the Greeks were eventually overwhelmed, their defiance inspired a later victory at Plataea, where Persian ambitions were crushed and Greece emerged triumphant. But peace was fleeting. The rivalry between Athens and Sparta reignited, plunging Greece into a brutal series of wars. Decades of bloodshed left the once mighty city-states exhausted, vulnerable, and weakened. It was in this fractured landscape that a new power began to rise from the north, the Kingdom of Macedonia. For centuries, sophisticated Greeks had looked down on Macedonia as a backward, unsophisticated land. But that perception changed under King Philip II. With innovative reforms and an insatiable hunger for expansion, Philip transformed Macedonia into a military powerhouse. His greatest innovation was the sarissa, an 18-foot spear that allowed his infantry to create an impenetrable wall of spears. His army, trained in the deadly art of the phalanx, became a force capable of subduing any enemy in its path. Philip's ambitions extended beyond Greece. He dreamed of launching a grand campaign to conquer the Persian Empire. But before he could see his vision realized, Philip was assassinated, leaving his empire and his dreams in the hands of his young son, Alexander. Alexander was no ordinary heir. Tutored by the great philosopher Aristotle, he possessed not only the physical prowess of a warrior, but also the intellectual depth of a statesman. Yet, his rise to power was not without its challenges. Rivals within Macedonia and rebellious Greek cities threatened his rule. Alexander responded with decisive ruthlessness. He executed those who dared to challenge him, crushed rebellions, and made an unforgettable example of Thebes, a city that dared to defy him. Thebes was razed to the ground, and its people were sold into slavery. The message was clear. Alexander was not to be trifled with. With Greece under his control, Alexander set his sights on Persia. In the spring of 334 BC, he led his army across the Hellespont into Asia Minor. This was not just a military campaign. It was the beginning of a saga that would forever change the course of history. His army, a formidable mix of Macedonian soldiers and Greek allies, was led by seasoned generals, many of whom had fought alongside his father. At the heart of this force were the Macedonian Phalangites, disciplined warriors armed with the deadly sarissa. Their formation was a wall of spears that few armies could withstand. Alexander's cavalry, known as the Companion Cavalry, was equally impressive. These 1,800 elite horsemen were Alexander's most trusted and loyal warriors, following him into the heart of battle time and time again. Alexander himself led them, always at the forefront, a king who would never ask his men to face dangers he would not face himself. The first major test of Alexander's campaign came at the river Granicus. The Persian governors of Asia Minor had gathered their forces to stop him, but Alexander, with characteristic boldness, launched an immediate assault. The battle was fierce, and Alexander himself was nearly killed when a Persian noble shattered his helmet with a sword strike. But through sheer grit and the loyalty of his men, Alexander triumphed, routing the Persians and opening the gateway to the rest of Asia Minor. This victory at the Granicus River was just the beginning. Over the next 18 months, Alexander pushed relentlessly into Persian territory. His campaign was swift and devastating, city after city falling before his might. The grandeur of the Persian Empire was challenged by the speed and determination of Alexander's advance. By the time he reached Cilicia, he was ready to face King Darius III of Persia himself. Darius assembled an army far larger than Alexander's forces. The two armies met at the Battle of Issus, where Alexander once again demonstrated his strategic brilliance. The narrow battlefield favored Alexander's smaller forces, allowing him to neutralize the Persian numerical advantage. In the heat of battle, Darius fled, abandoning his family and leaving his army to be decimated. The Persian Empire was now on the defensive. But Alexander's ambition went beyond military conquest. He saw himself not just as a conqueror, but as a ruler who could unify East and West. After his victory at Issus, he moved south, securing control of the Mediterranean coast. In Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator, crowned pharaoh, and founded the city of Alexandria, a city that would become one of the greatest centers of learning and culture in the ancient world. Yet, despite his victories, the Persian Empire was far from defeated. Darius had regrouped and was preparing for one final stand. The stage was set for the Battle of Gaugamela, one of the most significant battles in history. Once again, Darius outnumbered Alexander, but Alexander, with his unparalleled military genius, devised a strategy that broke the Persian lines. Darius fled once more, and with that, the Persian Empire collapsed. Alexander marched triumphantly into Babylon, now the master of the largest empire the world had ever seen. Alexander's conquests did not end there. He continued pushing east into lands previously unknown to the Greeks. His army, though weary from years of campaigning, followed him into India, where he faced new challenges, including war elephants and unfamiliar terrain. But no obstacle was too great for Alexander. His army marched on, conquering all in its path. But in the prime of his life, at just 32 years old, Alexander fell ill. Within a few short days, he was dead, leaving behind an empire without a clear successor. His generals, known as the Diadochi, soon fell into conflict, carving up his empire into their own kingdoms. Although Alexander's empire crumbled, the cultural and intellectual legacy he left behind endured for centuries. His conquests spread Greek culture across the known world, fusing it with local traditions to create the Hellenistic civilization, a period of immense cultural growth. Alexander the Great's life was one of unparalleled ambition, audacity, and vision. He refused to accept the limits of his time, transforming the world in ways that still resonate today. His empire may have faded, but his legacy remains, forever etched in history as one of the greatest leaders and military minds the world has ever seen. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Immutable Stories for more incredible tales from history. Join us on our next journey and hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure.